All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the official launch of Dear Stephen Michael's Mother by Kevin Barheit. I'm so pleased to be here tonight. We're going to ask some questions of Kevin behind the scenes and a couple of surprises built in too. But first, I want to add special thanks to Vischer Ferry General Store and Louise McManus, who owns that incredible store, for being our host location tonight. I'm Diane Cameron. I'm a local writer and author and teacher, and it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin and be able to hear from him how this extraordinary memoir came to be. So
Hi,
Kevin,
Diane.
hi Kevin. Thank you for
Uh,
doing this.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you, special thanks. I hope you don't mind me telling everyone at this given time in history, you are doing this and with the love of all your heart. You are, I think, 19 or 20 days after being diagnosed with COVID-19. You are on the mend. You are
Great.
going to do this for me with all the love in your heart. And this is what we do. We do what we can to be there for each other, to help each other, and to keep ourselves moving forward. And I'm just so blessed. I do want to say again, special thanks to Louise. Thank you, Louise, from the bottom of my heart. It's just such a wonderful place. And we don't have a lot of places these days are all about virtual. And I wanted to make sure, if possible, that we could have as much a sense of place and time in this history, but also in this moment for me, because it's a very special day for me and my family.
Absolutely. And also that this is a challenging time for all writers. We've been watching since March as new books have come out and bestseller lists have come out, and those writers not being able to go bookstore to bookstore. So here we are again at the Vischer Ferry General Store having your book launch. And I'm hoping this means thousands of people can join us. But as you said, moving forward, I'm going to jump into some questions here. You have a series of stories in your life. You have the story of being a child who was adopted at a time when adoptions were not open. And so you show us that, us what that is like. And then as an adult searching for the birth parents. But you also have an addiction recovery story that attaches to some degree to that adoption story, and you have a survivor of child sexual abuse story. Any one of those could have been a fabulous memoir, and you have created, I think of it as a necklace or a construction that weaves those three together. Can you talk first about how you made that choice? Did you make the choice to have all three, or did it start somewhere and you decided to let the others come in?
You're right to say all three. All three was not a version that I had in mind when I started. It wasn't about I was adopted, I was abused, I was addicted. And I speak of that in a lot of the interviews and in the book. Of course, that's the way I love that. It's just a piece of jewelry that
Right.
I created. It's almost that string of pearls, and each one has a different size and shape, but they all do they weave together. I think that for me, the obvious answer is no. I didn't have all three of those because I don't think I thought of myself as just a sum of those parts. I thought of these storylines, and the one storyline that stood out was the adoption search and that whole mesmerizing part of the book. And a lot of people said, that's the one you should write. And when I started writing it, I kept weaving back, just 3 a.m, trying to write things, sitting at my computer. And I said, wait, there's something else I need to say.
Right.
And that's when the history came in. That's when the memories came in. And it was this instantaneous connection between past, present, future, past, present, future. So it wasn't really, I never thought of adoption, abuse, addiction. I thought of where I was, where I am, where I'm going. And that just became an endeavor.
In many ways, it's interesting because, and I think this book is going to be so effective and so helpful for everybody in the adoption spectrum, the children, the adoptive parents, the birth parents of all different generations, because you cross a generation in adoption law and access. But I also think too that very helpful, very good, but that doesn't help us as a reader know who the man is, and these other two parts of the story show us who the boy and man is. And that's what kept me absolutely glued to the book.
I,
But so now we need to come to maybe a harder question, which is we know from Mark Twain, we know from a lot of people, in order for the reader to have a powerful emotional experience, the writer had to have a powerful emotional experience when they were writing, not just in the past that they are telling us about, but the writer has to go back emotionally in their body and remember viscerally what happened so that it can come to the page. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the word iterative comes out, and I think that's a good word for even the therapeutic process of healing. I think that the iterative process happened over years, prepping me for the possibility of writing, uh, helping me during the writing process, and even now, as the book is now out, or say I'm doing the audio recording for it for the audio book, those pieces all were iterative. I'm not the same person I was when I started the book, that's for sure. But a lot of people have asked me, including Connie Ostrowski, who may be here today. Maybe you'll come, Connie. Connie was my freshman English 1 and honors English writing teacher, English teacher at Schenectady County Community College. And
Wow.
yeah, and she and I are corresponding about the book, and we've rekindled, and it's been wonderful to connect. And she did ask me that. She said, I'm wondering if there was a process of a therapeutic process. Did you feel like there was a healing that went through that? And of course I was changed. And many people have said, boy, it must have been very therapeutic for you to write this. And I have to be real honest, I couldn't have written it without a whole lot of therapy.
Yeah.
So I think the iterativeness of it was, I understood the feelings, but if anyone understands PTSD, the most important thing of dealing with trauma is not reliving it, not regurgitating it, so to speak, and getting. So when I was writing it, I knew that I had to go back to the memory of the process, the memory of the healing. And yes, going back to
Right.
the memory of, say, the abuse or the addiction or the pieces that were there. And I had to find words for them. I didn't have to regurgitate them onto the page. That's therapy. I wasn't trying to do therapy
Right.
for myself, and I didn't want anyone else to have to endure that.
Right.
My therapist already got paid for that. I don't want you
That's
guys
right.
to have to pay for it.
Right. Well,
That's
and I really appreciate that, because I think one of the flaws that many of us have seen in memoir is people doing therapy on the page, or bringing what happened in the therapeutic room and kind of writing it down, which great for your journal, great for your diary, not very interesting for a reader. A reader wants to be right there emotionally with that person. So I think you really found a way to take us to the actual experience. Now, we know as adults and maybe as writers, something else had to happen for you had to make a translation there, and you do it so effectively. Um, and very, very good. Here's a question for you, and this comes up for all memoir writers, and that is about including uh, family, other non-family, their stories, implications about people who may have been in a, let's call it a bad scene with you somewhere in this story. And I know you chose to change some names to protect a few people, but you kept family in as family, and that was really a treasure.
I think that you're right. There was a real essence of wanting to be protective, but also honor people's privacy, one, but also their life, their love, their passions, their interests. I wanted to show, I couldn't show everyone with all their nuances. That's impossible. Those are 50 different books about 50
Right,
different people. So this book needed to be about me. And as you know, in reading it, I didn't pull any punches, and I tried to show
right,
myself warts and all. And I think I was trying to be honest with other people that I depicted in the book. That's exactly the way I remember them. That's exactly who they are to me. But I find that it's important to also be gentle with others. It's important to be, I think a better word is generous. Be generous towards the people you're writing about. I had to be generous towards my family, and even the people that had hurt me, even the people that had been detrimental to me and
right,
others. And that's a real hard thing to do, because there has to be forgiveness before I could write about them. I had to write about them with, if not full empathy, at least with compassion.
right. And Kevin, I think that you've said that so beautifully. That is what recommends this book, because again, we've all read memoir about people who said, this bad thing happened, this bad thing happened, then I survived, and they were bad and they were mean. And clearly the bad things are implied in this book, but your generosity comes across. And I think that generosity is what gives the reader hope, especially someone who is struggling in any one of the ways that you struggled, that they can say, that guy got there. He isn't hating all those people. He isn't trying to get them. He isn't trying to punish them. Maybe I could get a little more in that direction. And that's what creates this book is so filled. It's filled with so many moments of like, oh, that poor boy, but also like he got out. He got to another place.
Yes.
And without denying the challenging parts. That's isn't that what we all want, whether our traumas are itty bitty or gigantic? We want that.
Over and over, my general, if there was a general through line, it was don't judge a book by its cover. Another through line will, if there wasn't a movie that already had the title Silver Linings Playbook, that could have been the name of this book.
Right.
There's a very special reason it's called Dear Stephen Michael's Mother, and it couldn't have been named anything else. But that's the idea. And sometimes I feel like these stories that I tell, sometimes feels like they're not even silver linings. They're almost like bronze linings or
Right,
wooden linings,
exactly.
or sometimes grains of sand, but there's something. And
Right.
those are the some things that I hold on to. And I think generosity is a word I haven't used before. In my mind, I don't remember using it in interviews or in any of the YouTube videos. But I think, the other one is the generosity comes from gratitude. Gratitude, not that I was hurt by others, but that I have this life where I can look back and say, geez, that was awful, but I'm not there now. And now I can give something to other people. And therefore I have an understanding of what gratitude really is. To me, it's not just a list of things I'm thankful for. It's a way of me saying, how do I measure my gratitude today? What have I done to give? What have I done to be generous? And that's a great word. I'm going to remember this is a word I just kind of came up with in the moment, is generosity. Have I been
Right.
generous today? Generous to the people who have hurt me, and I think that's what I really tried to do in the book, was be
We
generous.
are all broken people,
Every one of us.
and that the whole business about that's where we get stronger. They don't go away. Nobody erases those wounds, but we are stronger there. Kevin, it is such a pleasure to be talking with you and be able to ask you more about this extraordinary book. But it's a memoir, right? And memoirs are about more than the author.
Right.
So I'm wondering, can we talk to some of the other people in the book?
Let's do it.
Okay. As the spouse of a writer, what has this been like for you in terms of like time and focus? I know because I'm a writer, and I know during the 2 years that I took to write a book, it had a big impact on my family and on my husband.
It is definitely an exciting process to see him from where he was thinking about writing this book to, going through the whole process and then actually publishing it.
Right.
It's just amazing. So a lot of people think about, like, even myself, like, we have stories, right? But to to form into a product like a book, it's not an easy task.
Right.
So I have a respect for him doing that. Yeah.
I do too. But also for you to be there is something very specific about being a writer partner.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
letting that person have their creative experience with its ups and downs, because
Yes.
this book has ups and downs inside it. So I'm sure in the writing there were ups and downs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was a little bit nervous, I guess, at times about, whether this hard story that he's writing will affect him emotionally,
Right.
because, you probably, uh, he might have shared this with you, but he has had, you know, um he has struggles with depression or other, mood
Right.
up and down.
Right.
So I was a little bit mindful of observing whether this is impacting him or not. But
Right.
I
And
think he
it's a
really.
powerful book. So I know those emotions can't stay in the background. If you want the
Mhm.
reader to have a powerful experience, the writer has to have a powerful experience.
Right, right, making yourself vulnerable
Right.
to expose to that past that a lot of people would rather just seal it and not never visit, right?
Right.
So, but I think I didn't have to worry too much. I think at this point he has come up with a lot of support network, his therapist, his, people from AA or sponsees, a lot of people that he can rely on, and not
Yeah.
just myself. But so, I wasn't really concerned about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the, in some ways, one of the hidden things about, I think, effective writers, ones who get to where Kevin got, the book is published, to get to that point.
Mhm.
There's a community surrounding. You have to be able to call people and say, why did I ever say I was going to do this?
Yeah. But I think, every time he shares his stories, like he's the kind of person who would talk to a total stranger in an elevator for like, 10 minutes, like
Right, right.
telling about his life story, not just, the hard stuff, but, for example, like the story about how we met, or, he's good at telling stories. And
He's
so
very good.
people are often, amazed, like, wow, that's an amazing stories that you have. And, so I think he had that in him to be able to do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you know you were marrying a writer?
No, I knew that I was marrying an actor. And that's
Ah,
when he was pursuing his professional acting career in New York City. And that's when I met him. He was a starving artist and working as a telemarketer in Brooklyn, BAM, Brooklyn Art
oh,
of
Academy of Music.
Academy of Music, sorry. Yeah, so he was selling tickets on the phone. So that's how he made a living. So needless to say, he was very poor, and he was, going through, auditions, and I have seen him act on the off Broadway. So yeah, I knew about that, but nothing about author or
So
writer.
what's interesting is, I mean, actor using voice and stories, telemarketer using voice and stories. I mean, that
Yeah.
thread comes through. So the book is the natural next step.
Yes. And I know that I personally really love audiobooks. I do.
I
I
do too. I have
listen.
one in the
Yeah.
car always.
Yes. It's so something that I look forward to going into the car because I want
Right.
to listen to the stories. So I know he's working on that part. So and then I think that he has been told a lot of times that he has the kind of voice that, I don't know, it's also a good for audio,
Right.
like voiceover or
Right.
audiobooks, stuff like that. So I'm excited about that he's doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this book will translate perfectly because
Mhm.
um, it's very powerful, and even some of the really challenging parts,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
want to hear them. You want to hear the author say that out
Mhm.
loud. Um,
Yes,
and it'll go into people's hearts. Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me ask you this, since your field is like child welfare, child care, in those aspects, Kevin's story has a lot of challenging, difficult pieces of when
Mhm.
he was a child,
Mhm.
trauma, clearly,
Mhm.
lots
Mhm.
of childhood trauma. Um,
Mhm.
and you go to work and you probably see and hear
Mhm. Mhm.
similar stories.
Yes.
Do they connect for you?
Definitely. Yes. Yes. We often talk about, like, come home and talk to him about um, my experience at work, to a point where he says, "Oh, no, I don't want to hear it anymore."
No, I lived it. You can have it.
Right. Yeah. So um, that story that he wrote about is always sort of back in my head as a sort of like not long-term study, but like our work, we don't have tangible outcome often,
Right,
immediate one anyway, you
right,
know. Um, but I always sort of have to sometimes repeat myself, in my head, that, like, this could have a long-term effect,
right,
what we are doing,
right,
especially when I'm kind of like feeling defeated.
right.
Like I often feel like I'm running that hamster, just
Yeah.
not going anywhere. You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
working so hard, but nothing is happening, or
Right.
even
And the
like,
change comes so slowly.
yeah. So that in that sense, it's hopeful. It gives me hope to hear, like, his counselor when he was a teenager in group home, or probation officer that I work closely with right
Right.
now. Those people could really have an impact. It could be like 1 in 100. Who
Right.
knows?
Right.
It's I know that it's not always rosy
Right.
future that these kids are might have in the future.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to overcome that, but even if like really small percentage we can touch, that really is worth it.
I would imagine many ways you are living with the the possible success story that someone can uh,
Yes.
not just survive. Survive is one part of this, but also then have all the things we want: a family, a home, a job, friends.
Mm-hmm,
So many
mm-hmm,
people come out of trauma and they're not able to make friends. That trust is irrevocably broken.
mm-hmm,
Um, and here is Kevin showing all of it. This is why I think this book is so powerful, because we're all somewhere on the trauma continuum, and
mm-hmm,
his is quite extreme. So anybody on that continuum can say, okay, that guy got there.
mm-hmm,
I can
mm-hmm.
get somewhere from where I am.
Right.
Like I'm allowed to have a dream of a marriage someday, or a
Right.
family someday.
Right.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's his goal. That's his purpose of doing this,
right,
exposing all this, hard stuff of his own life to the world. But
right,
that's his goal, to do that, for
right.
people to be able to say that. Yeah, and
And
then
I think it will be so effective. Um,
yeah.
So it has been such a pleasure talking to you. Very often we don't get to hear from the partner of a writer. So this has been very insightful. People are going to love learning this part of a writing story too. So thanks for making time today.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Take good care.
Thank you. You too.
He's good at
Aw. Thank you so much for being part of this launch of Kevin's book. I imagine you must be very proud of him.
very, very
Yeah.
proud.
And he's been working on this book for a long time. And have you seen that? Have you been aware of him doing this writing?
No,
When
no.
when did it become clear to you that he was telling this story?
Well, he told me he's writing it, and he was in the process, but it was so long, on and off. He'd say, "Do you remember this?" or "Do you remember that?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful baby, beautiful."
Oh, you
Yeah.
remember that.
Oh, yes, he was. I don't know why they have that stigma of adoption, meaning something. It's adoption of love. My husband and I were married 11 years, and we just had a lot of love for another, baby.
Right. And
Yeah.
Kevin got to be that baby, which is
Yeah.
so moving, and a moving
Yes.
part of the book.
Oh, he's so cute.
And also he's very smart, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I try to tell him that for years. He's very intelligent, and he can do so many things, but he knows exactly what he wants to do now. And well, the last 36 years, and he's been marvelous.
Yeah.
He's accomplished everything that he
And I
wants.
think this book, on top of all those other accomplishments, I think um, goes above and beyond. It's going to help other people. The
Yes.
thing, it's just so clear. It's going to help other people. And you, by being part of the story, and you've given permission for this story to be
Now,
out there, that you are helping other people. And that's very moving.
I just hope it helps one, and then it goes on to another one. And
Right,
it's like a chain reaction.
right.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
you must be aware the laws are changing around adoption records. They're changing around access and even the way adoptions are done now.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
They needed to change. It was really antique.
yeah.
They doing that. Yeah. I still remember the day we picked him up. It was so cute.
Aw.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very intelligent man.
How old was Kevin the day you picked him up?
Well, he was 6 weeks old. We knew about it 6 weeks prior, but he had a cold and they wouldn't release him to us for the cold. They got a doctor to take care of him and a foster mother, and until he got rid of the cold, and then he was on schedule, and you couldn't ask for a better schedule. He was very good. Yes, he did a lot of things, and he's helping a lot of people now.
Enormous number of people. I think this book is going to explode into help for people.
I hope
People
so.
wrestling with both adoptive parents and adopted children will both be helped by this, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
So we're very grateful to you for being part of Kevin's life, obviously, but also to be in this story and of this story. So thank you for joining us for this
Oh.
program and letting people see the mother behind the scenes.
Oh, thank you.
Very grateful and happy to meet you.
Happy everything.
Happy everything. Absolutely.
Every day, God blesses us with everything. Everything you do. It's a beautiful day.
It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. Well, thank you for making this interview and for helping Kevin.
I'm so happy to. I'm so happy to see this book reach the world.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Kevin, I want to thank you for writing this book, for talking to all of us tonight, for being generous in sharing all of your story and even sharing some of your family tonight. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who tuned in. And again, a special thank you to Vischer Ferry General Store for being our beautiful location. And I think we'll move on.
Yeah, now we're going to take some questions from other folks. So Jermaine is going to be running this. And before we turn it over to Jermaine, again, Diane, this has been truly a treasure. I will see you soon. And we're gonna put another plug in. I'll see you soon at Hooked Seafood.
That's right.
And
Oysters.
Oysters. It's time for oysters. It's great to see you again, Diane. And please heal you and your family. Just health and well-being to both of you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Just wanted to take a couple minutes to read a little bit from the book. And I'm going to pick a couple of sections here, one from the beginning, and then maybe later during the Q&A, I'll grab another section from towards the end of the book. Not the very end. Don't want any spoilers here. And then Jermaine is going to spend a few minutes. He'll be going through some of your questions. So if you have any more questions you want to drop in, that'd be great. He'll pick a few and we'll kind of move on. I am so pleased to start by reading the very beginning. It's probably, to be honest with you, the first thing I ever wrote. And I don't think it's been much rewritten since the actual day that I wrote it. Probably edited a little bit by my dear editor. Hello, Ginny Roots. I'm so grateful you're here today. From Touchstone Publishing, you have won my heart long ago. I'm going to read from Dear Stephen Michael's mother. This is prologue, Learning. September 2007. Deep breath in. Betty Ann's oldest brother, Francis, died in a hospital in New Orleans, his liver completely pickled, shortly after Hurricane Katrina ripped through the coast in 2005. The second oldest, Steve, a heroin addict, lives in Yuma, Arizona. Steve recently got out of a halfway house. The only drugs he takes now are prescribed for bipolar disorder and depression. The youngest brother, Bob, is a happy-go-lucky beer drinker, still living in New Orleans. Betty Ann was okay for the most part, as long as she took her medications. Without them, she might be found in the garage, lining up hundreds of empty milk cartons for tomato plants. She lived on a horse ranch, and they didn't grow tomatoes. Betty Ann was my mother. I have never met any of these people. Exhale. And now we're going to go to some Q&A, and I'm not going to be looking at the camera because I've got my dear friend who is off camera. You're going to hear his voice, Jermaine Wells. Hey, Jermaine.
Oh, hey, it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you so much.
It's so wonderful to see all these people that are attending. And we have some pretty juicy questions.
No. Let's stop there. Stop there. Here we go.
First question.
Sure.
What did you do today?
I, believe it or not, did laundry today. I did laundry today. I took it slow today. It's a big day. Book launch is different than a book birthday. And I kind of thought about that all day today, that 3 weeks ago today was the actual day that anyone in the world could access the book, could bring my creation into their world. And that hadn't happened before. But this is 3 weeks later, and it's out there in the world. And it's kind of a bittersweet day in a lot of ways. And I wanted to feel that, but I also wanted to take care of myself. So most of the day was doing laundry. I wanted to clean the sheets and get the comforter ready. And so when I get home tonight, I'm going to be able to snuggle up in those blankets and hopefully just cry myself to sleep, tears of joy.
All right, that is a nice thought. Keeping warm, snugging, being secure. So we're going to move on. Denise Bird writes, did you learn something new about yourself while writing your memoir that surprised you?
I think there were so many different things that I learned, but that's a great question, what surprised me. And I think you heard it a little bit earlier, right? When I talked about that generosity, when I talked about that gratitude with Diane. And I think that I learned that not only was there generosity around me, there was generosity of spirit of the people that were in my life already, but the new people that I hadn't even met yet, and the people that were going to be there for me in the future. What I found that was most surprising for me in the writing was the generosity that I already had, that I never knew was there. That level of kindness is the word that I've been sitting on for the last couple of years, that was just buried. It was just so darn buried beneath maybe the pain and the struggle and the sadness and the loneliness. And through the, I think, process of writing, but also process of trusting and becoming more, I think, like who I always wanted to be, I learned that there was things inside of me I never knew were there. One of them was the kindness. And now I think even today, you're seeing it just appear today in this hour. I'm really understanding it was a piece of generosity that I just never felt existed in my life, much less in my heart. And it's been there forever. I just need to uncover that. I think that's what I discovered.
Wow. Wow, that's very profound. And in the spirit of generosity and looking at your backdrop, right? You have the lights, you have the tree. So that's a beautiful sentiment. All right, we're going to move on to another question. We have Lisa Pfeiffer.
Lisa, hello Lisa, thank you so much.
Were you frightened that you may relapse during this process?
No.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, the fact that I can say that word that quickly is not a reflection on my confidence that I will never relapse. I think that the truth is that I'm never frightened that I will relapse. On drugs and alcohol is what we're referring to. And January 1 will be a celebration for me. That's, a big mile marker for me. I didn't get there by knowing that I could get there. I didn't get there by holding on and saying, no matter what, I'm going to make it to 35 years, to 40 years, to 50 years. I never did that. I was always confident that if I just made it through this day, and sometimes, as you know, if you've read the book, through the minute, through a breath, if I could make it through a breath, then that's all I had to hang on to. So the idea of being afraid of relapse isn't really something that I live with. I know that I can and may relapse someday. I know that that's always a possibility for me. I'm not afraid of it. I'm aware of it. And I accept it as a part of, I think, what we know of now as a part of the addiction process. Many people relapse. There's no shame in that. There's an understanding that maybe I'm an oddity. The fact that I haven't relapsed through the book writing or even just through tying my shoelaces in the morning, that's a reflection not on anything that I've figured out that I'm going to do right so I don't have to have that fear. It's on my acceptance that every day I've got to be aware. Every day I've got to know that even if I'm writing the book or I'm tying my shoelaces or I'm struggling with maybe some other grief in my life, something really tragic like when my father passed away, there are things that I know that they're non-negotiable for me, and they are part of being a part of the recovery community. And I think that's been really key for me to understand.
Wow, what a thoughtful answer, and it's amazing that you can say that with confidence, and that you do remind others that there is no shame if you do need to get that help again. As you know, and a lot of people on here would be more than willing to give you whatever support you needed in that, right?
That's right. It's all about community, and you're part of that community, Jermaine. And Lisa, you're part of that community, and all the people that are either on this call or many who didn't make it today. I rely on that. I know that I'm not alone. So I'm not afraid. I'm aware. It could happen, and it does happen. And I've lost people. They've died. A man named Shia died a few years ago, one of my dearest, dearest friends. And one of my oldest and first friends in recovery, Keith. Keith passed away a long time ago now. We do lose people to addiction. We do lose people to relapse. I know it can happen to me. That's why I come up every day and I try to take care of myself. But I think the real key is that I reach out for others. I reach out to others to try to be of service. That's where I find my confidence lies, not in anything that I'm going to do on my own, but what I can do by giving to others and doing this in community.
Absolutely. We're going to look for another question here. This is from Candy Warrington.
Candy.
Do you think that the adoption caused, for lack of a better word, many of the problems you went through?
Yes. Yes, and there's an individual answer, and then there's, I think, a more collective answer. And I think especially in the adoption community, and especially in the research that's been done and many of the books that have been written and current research that's ongoing now, we understand that there's something called a primal wound, and that is not negotiable for me. I understand that that's a part of who I am. It's probably not quote unquote repairable. Again, something I accept. Now, if I were to say that that will always cause problems, that would be a fallacy. That would be something that I could never say about other people. What I often say is that there were many things that happened to me. The first one was the relinquishment, the separation, the abandonment, the sense of not being connected to what I was connected to. The second was the abuse, and the third was the addiction. The first thing that I ever dealt with was the addiction. The second thing I dealt with was the abuse, understanding that abuse. I was 2 years sober when I did that. The last thing that I really looked at was the primal wound, this adoption scenario in my life, because it really was, I think, something that I understood to just be something that I should have gotten over. But what I've recognized is that it is something that I can process. It is something that I can grow with. It is something that I can come to accept. But I also understand that it was the first wound. There were many wounds. The addiction caused a great tear in my soul. The abuse that I suffered ruined me in so many ways and neurologically changed me. But the first one was that relinquishment.
All right. I'll go to another question from John Buchanan, but I'll word it in a way so you can give what you want to give out of this question. Because we don't want to give everything away. We want people to purchase the book, which is now available on Amazon.com, right?
You got it.
So it says that, I'll try to reword it, Julie was the star of the book. Could you talk about how it felt to have her say those words? I will allow you to answer how you want. I won't go in any more into the way the question was asked.
Sure. There's a real easy way to answer that, and I think it's without giving anything away. There are words that I waited all my life to hear. There are words that I didn't feel that I had a right to ever hear. There are words and I think comfort that I wanted, longed for, cared for, and those words came from Julie. Those pieces that came from Julie were memories, and those memories then became mine, shared memories, and now we build on those memories together. I think without giving too much away, how I felt was like I had just been lifted out of my own pain and misery that I thought I would spend the rest of my life in. Like I thought I was given a gift that I didn't deserve, but I would never want to reject. And I think you're right, Julie is my shining star.
Wow. Well, beautifully answered. And you danced around that perfectly to not give too much away.
Now you want to read the book and find out what's Julie.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. And this is from a podcast. It's called Recovery Survey Podcast.
Brett, my friend Brett.
Was it difficult to relive your trauma when writing the book?
No, Brett's someone who's interviewed me for his podcast, Recovery Survey, and it's something I hope anyone who's interested will take some time to look at for Recovery Survey. It's very easy to find. Wonderful interviews with other people in recovery, and it focuses on recovery from the drugs and the alcohol. No, interestingly enough, and many people have asked me about the recovery process, and then was this therapeutic for me? Even one of my professors, Connie Ostrowski, who was my English professor in college, who really helped me to start writing and believing I could write more than just my name. She asked me just recently in an email, was it therapeutic for you? And my answer is always a little bit, coy, but I say, no, but I thank God that I had a lot of therapy before I started writing it. So I do believe that there was some pieces of writing this book that were cathartic, that were really just awakened. They awakened, I think, different feelings in me, but they weren't about the addiction and they weren't about the trauma. Those things I had processed, not perfectly, but so well that I was prepped for the writing, that I could understand not only what I went through from an intellectual or even an emotional, but deep down in my soul, I needed to understand that. That took years to get to that place. I really was, I think, very aware that as I was writing it, things would surprise me, but the things that surprised me were when I wrote about meeting my wife for the first time, my ex-wife for the first time, my ex-wife now, the wife of the mother of my oldest children. When I wrote about meeting her in high school as kids and reliving the feelings of being young and alive and hopeful, even in the midst of all the trauma, that made me cry. That made me process feelings I didn't even know I had. Going and writing about the birth of my children, oh my goodness. Writing about that, I never knew that I could just live so deeply in those moments. And that was the beauty of it. But the recovery was actually not easy to write. It was hard to articulate, it was hard to structure, but it wasn't traumatic for me to express that. It was just finding the right words to express that trauma.
Wow. What a thoughtful answer also. But you know what it brings to mind? A mantra that I'm sure anybody knows and loves you and your family and friends. Do the work. Just do the work.
Just do the work. Yes, where have we heard that before? Sorry, Tyler.
Let's see here as I scroll through. Okay. Let's see here. We have Ellen Yu.
Yes.
I want to say hi to Ellen. I know you took several years to write this book. What advice would you give your younger self when you started writing the book?
Well, I think Jermaine just pointed out one of the most important things, and I probably didn't learn that at the beginning. I learned that maybe halfway through the writing of the book. Just do the work. That's, I think, a real important thing. And Jermaine was really pointing out something that I had to learn. So many times I get in my own way. I get in my own way when I'm comparing and competing with maybe other authors. I'm thinking about how badly I'm writing as opposed to somebody that I admire. You know, Tobias Wolff is one of my favorite authors, and every time I read This Boy's Life, I think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be writing anything ever. I shouldn't even write my name. I shouldn't write my address on an envelope because I could never do what he does. I got to get that out of the way. And that's the idea of just do the work means not that you trust yourself, not that you know you're going to come up with something perfect, but recognize that everything's iterative. So I think that if I could go back to my quote unquote earlier self 13 years ago, when people said, you should write this, and I kept saying, but I can't write. Those were my answers. You know, I think that I would go back and I would say, just do the work. Trust that whatever comes out of you is going to be the best it can be for you right now. And that's going to add up over time. My good friend Steven told me, he's a namesake of mine, he told me, Kevin, write the first draft. It's going to be a piece of crap. Just write it. Now, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, playwright actually. So when I hear someone like that tell me, just write it, it's going to be crap, that's the thing that I think I hold on to now. Don't worry about the end product. Get out of your own way, trust yourself, and just do the work.
That's that. We've got about 10 minutes. So a couple more questions. And all right, here's one. Regarding the book, what would you consider the happiest day?
Okay. All right. Can I go happy, sad? Can I do that?
I think, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna answer, and if you don't mind, that's a great question. Whoever asked that, because the idea is there's going to be happy days and there's going to be sad days, right? But no day is only happy and no day is only sad. So I would say, what are my happiest moments and my saddest moments? And I think that's been really clear to me at times. I think that really, interestingly enough, in this process of writing the book, and Ginny Roots is my editor extraordinaire and worked with me for months. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, we've gone as far as we can get it. And I read it through. And I said, oh my God, what is this? And I took a week off and I read it through again. And I was at the end of the book and I remember sitting there and saying, we did it. We did it. But there was this moment of happiness that was there. But it was also a moment of almost sadness. Almost this moment of saying, but it's over. We did it. And there's no more, there was two words at the end of my book. Do you know what it was? The end. And I had to feel that. But I will say that there's another day that has the same happy, sad. You know what it is? Right now. Right now. This is one of the most amazing days of my life. This is a book launch, a book release. It's a party. It's joyful, and I feel over-the-top joy. But 3 weeks ago, I told you there was a book birthday. I created something. And then I just gave it to you guys. I just gave it to the world. So today is, I guess, all day I just kept feeling like this is wonderful. But I've got 4 kids and 3 grandkids. My youngest son is on tonight, probably 20 years old. And I remember when I knew he was going off to college. And I felt like, that's it. I got to let him go out into the world now. And I'm always going to be dad. I'm always going to be the guy. Well, that's how I feel about this book. There's a real joy that I've gotten to this point and that the book is being well received. But there's a real loss and a grief of it's not mine anymore. It's not mine. It's now yours. And it's going to grow up and be whatever it's supposed to be.
Wow. Let's see. Let's take another question here. Okay, this is from Liz DeGuire, or Liz DeGuire?
Lise.
Lise? Okay, I was right. Writing a memoir means you are entirely out there in the world emotionally. Is this hard or easy for you?
It's hard. The risk involved in it is a daily task of mine to manage. And I think managing that risk means not trying to protect myself from being vulnerable, but nurturing myself in preparation to be vulnerable.
I think what's really important to me to know is that, maybe it's important for you folks to know, that the last thing I did before I left the house to come here to this wonderful store is I sat for 15 minutes in deep meditation. And it wasn't because I was going to open up my, thought process so that I would be perfect for this moment. It's because I need to be the most centered for whatever is going to happen next. Because when I'm vulnerable in this world, which I try to be always, anything can hit me. Anything can poke me. Anything can throw me off my game. And being vulnerable as a writer is critical. But I really don't want to do that unless I am healthy. And that means sleeping right, eating right, really taking care of myself, meditating, and doing all these non-negotiables that I've chosen in my life that really put me in a place where even if it's a rough day, maybe I'm processing the writing, maybe I'm processing some of the emotions around that, and I'm struggling with it, I know where to go to get that relief. And maybe it's to the community that is really a supportive line. But a lot of times it's to that moment of 15 minutes of meditation. A lot of times it's to prayer. And a lot of times it's just sit in the chair and look out at the trees. Just find that inner peace in that moment. There's that resiliency, and I'm going to use the word because Lisa Claire has written a beautiful, amazing book called, oh my goodness, it just went, oh my goodness, I hate when that happens. Oh my goodness, write it, Liz, so my brain doesn't pop out. Flashback Girl. I kept thinking Burn. Flashback Girl. I couldn't get the word Flashback Girl, and it's a book about resiliency, and I think you all should read that. It's a wonderful book to lift you up. And Flashback Girl is something that I have read myself and has helped me in my understanding of how to take care of myself in preparation for things like an interview like this where I can't remember the name of a book and I want to sweat and I want to panic. It's all going to be okay. We can get through this together.
That's right. We can certainly get through this together. And it leads me to I'm sorry I can't get to everybody's questions, but I like this one.
Oh, no.
And this is from Rachel Broom. She says, here's a question. What is your next project? and she's sending a wink, the smiley face with the wink.
Rachel Broom is my writing coach. And also my editor and proofreader extraordinaire, along with Ginny Ruths and some other folks who have been very supportive. It's funny, I was thinking about that today. What's my next project? And I guess the answer would be, you mean what's my next 2 projects? What's my next 10 projects? I think Jermaine knows me well, and you all know me well, that there's always something on the to-do list. I would say that there has always been an understanding that this book was going to be a standalone book. And then I finished it and realized there was more. This book, as you know, it leaves some things unanswered, which a good book should. And I think there are 2 other books that I could talk about. I don't have a name for the next one. So eventually when I tell you about what I think it'll be, maybe you can help me come up with a name. I do have a name for the 3rd one, but I'm not sure exactly what I want it to be about. That'll be Feed Out, Get Out, Go. And if you read the book, you'll understand why it's called Feed Out, Get Out, Go. But that's more down the line, probably several years from now. That's more a book about where I am in the moment, a few years from now when I'm writing the book, everything that I've learned and how I want to move forward. But the next one is really about what the gaps are in this current book. Dear Stephen Michael's Mother gives you a 2-year search for my biological mother, and also from birth to 23, but you don't know what happens from 23 to the time I start my search, and you don't know what happens after the search really concludes. There's a gap of years there. And so the idea now is to write that book. And the real answer would be, I just thought of it today, believe it or not, and I told my wife, I said, I know how I'm going to start the next timeline when I met my wife, Ellie. So, because that's when I had about 6 or 7 years sober, I don't want to take everybody through the first 7 years of my sobriety. I don't want to write a book like that. But I can start the book there, and you can see how those pieces have come together. So that's the next idea, and if you can come up with an idea, because it'll be that book, that story, along with the story of what happens after I conclude my search and how has it transpired and changed my life. come up with an idea for that. You can put that on Facebook or put it on a chat. That's a great question, Rachel. Thanks, Rachel.
That was a great question. Now we are
Can
coming up close to.
Can I read one
I
more
would
time?
say this is definitely time because we got about 3 minutes before 7.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up with a little bit of a reading here, and this is towards the end of the book, because I want everyone knows that I'm sitting here, I'm okay, but we don't even know, how that all happened, and that's in the book, but I am okay, and I did make this journey, and this is after my first 12-step meeting. No big surprise there, all everyone knows. As I leave the building, the wind picks up and I dash away from the crowd down the steps to the car and drive back to the apartment, where Michelle meets me at the door. I'm tired, drained, but feel cleansed, if not actually clean. How was it? She looks up at me, her curly black hair framing her smile, her eyes pleading and hopeful. I take a breath, let it out long and slow. The words come easily, gently sounding out everything I feel inside. I think I'm going to be okay. Michelle lights up like the tiny Christmas tree that's still in the room, dim but present, persistent. I feed off of her light, find an extra spark of energy. Let's go shopping. Shopping? I nod weakly and manage a smile. I'm hungry. I take the keys to her Chevette and turn down the long, dark road from our apartment complex. Snow is falling, beginning to stick to the road. Michelle's animated, chatty, making a list of what we need, some snacks for the night, a late dinner. For the first time, I can remember my mind feels calm. I lean into the steering wheel, my body bouncing in time with the bumps in the road, fidgeting instead of shaking. You look happy. She watches me. I feel something. What? I don't know, like those people in the meeting. Michelle waits while I drive slowly on the wet road. They were all smiling, but not fake smiling, but smiling like they meant it. You feel like that now? I don't know what I feel. Are you going to go back? I nod as the car eases to a stop at a red light. Michelle, if I could just have 5% of what those people have, I'd be happy for the rest of my life.
Wow. All right. That brings us to just about 7 o'clock. And I want to say, Kevin, I've been around for a lot of this journey. And it makes me so proud to be able to be a part, every little part that I am. And I think I can say this for all of us, that we appreciate you, we love you, we support you, and we're going to go buy this book, which is available now on Amazon.
Jermaine is doing what we all know of as this wonderful call to action. Every book launch should have a call to action. So if I could ask you that, I would ask you specifically what Jermaine said. If you haven't bought the book, go ahead. But I think I really want to highlight what I said earlier, folks. This isn't my book anymore. It's your book. And I don't really want to let it go, but I gotta. So it's now your turn to take care of it. So do me a favor. If you read the book, give it to somebody else. Pass it on. Even if you don't tell them to buy it, just hand it to them. I'm hoping that this book has a life all of its own. Like my mother said earlier, and she was wonderful to say, that it just keeps going, right? That it just has some chain reaction. I can't do that. I cannot do that. I got to let it go. Today I'm letting it go. I'm sure I'll still be watching and holding on and trying to follow it. But you're going to take it where you want to take it. So please take it. And every day that you think about this book, remember that, yeah, I created it and I gave it to you. Thank you so much for being here today. I trust that you'll take good care of this story that I've given to the world. And I'm looking forward to telling more stories and being a part of your life. And please find me everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, etc. But let's keep connected because I ain't going nowhere. Thanks. Thanks, Jermaine.
You're welcome anytime. My pleasure. So we'll leave with the cover of the book before we sign off. Again, thank you to everyone for being part. And this live is going to stay on Kevin's Facebook page, and he'll send links to people that we can share this link so people can still experience this very shortly. Again, all have a wonderful, safe holiday season. And we thank you so much for taking your time out of your schedule for joining us. Good night.